Wow. So we've talked a little bit about the word rest today. What rises up first when someone says rest? For some, it's sleep, that long-awaited collapse into a soft bed after an exhausting day. For others, it might be stillness, a quiet room, a pause in all of the noise, a moment where nothing is demanded of you. Maybe it's a vacation. Maybe it's stepping away from that responsibility. But maybe it's something harder to access, something that feels distant, even impossible in this life that's shaped by constant urgency. Rest is more than stopping, it's more than recovering, it's a return to yourself. It's that sense of belonging in your own body and in the world around you. So maybe the question isn't just what is rest or how do we rest? Maybe it's also where do you feel safe enough to experience rest? As Reverend Mykal mentioned earlier, last month we had the opportunity to attend Finding Our Way Home in Asheville, North Carolina, with 120 or so other religious professionals of color. There we were held gently, intentionally together. It was a communal space of rest. Rest that we created together. Rest in that space wasn't just silence. It wasn't empty, it was full. It was laughter that didn't need explaining. It was shared recognition, shared understanding. It felt like being surrounded by people whose joy moves in rhythms familiar to your own body. It was spontaneous song. It was familiarity and care. The kind that says you don't have to translate yourself here. You don't have to earn your rest or your belonging. In a world that so often demands urgency and extraction, choosing rest together is our act of resistance. Choosing rest together is our act of love. It teaches us that care is not always loud. It's not always urgent. It can be slow, soft, and spacious. Sometimes care is simply the freedom to breathe in and breathe out in community.
Friends, my UU journey began in New England, with congregations honestly so close in proximity that if you stood on a particular corner, you could probably see more than one at a time. Like the vast majority of our congregations, they were predominantly white, and despite the close proximity, were entirely disconnected from one another. Because of these things, they were not culturally relevant to me as a black person, not particularly soft or spacious, with more scarcity thinking than abundance thinking. Fully exhaling in community hasn't always felt possible. But thankfully, the congregations that I was most connected to were spiritually open in ways that helped my Buddhism and my Christianity and my African-centered spiritualities all coexist. And that felt good. I'd never had that before, so it was worth sticking around for. I'll never forget that day in early February of 2016 when I received a note in my inbox about a retreat for UU religious professionals who were black, indigenous, and other people of color. It thrilled me in ways I could not describe. I'm pretty sure I both screamed and cried about it. And by the time I got there, I almost didn't know how to be in that space. Being in a room with only bi-POC UUs was a first for me. at that time. And getting to hear from people who had learned how to navigate the unsteady waters of our faith offered some hope and some possibility. But the next year, 2017, was special. I was newly on staff as the minister for Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism. How many of us in this room have heard of Blue? Yep, a few of you. Blue is a ministry for Black UUs who live all over the country and the world. And so I was their minister for 8.5 years before I arrived here. Thank you. So I was newly on staff as a minister for Blue, and I had only been a parent for 8 months. I was tired and a little out of sorts. I'm sure none of you know what that's like. Of course, Zora was with me and my then spouse when we went that year. And it took literally seconds flat for one of our elders, the Reverend Cheryl M. Walker, to approach us with an interest in doing a child dedication for Zora in that community. It had never been done at Finding Our Way Home before. And we hadn't really considered having Zora dedicated in the communities that I had served before that time. The disconnects that I spoke about earlier, those disconnects were real and left us unclear about what it meant to dedicate our child in that space, in any space. But this was different. It offered a sense of home for Zora's little life and very big spirit that felt alive and connected and full of everything that made sense to us as a family of color. So there we were, 3 days into a 5-day retreat, standing up front, holding our little baby, very tired, our little baby who was very, very social and very, very interested in all these new faces who were smiling at her. Beautiful prayers and hopes being spoken over her. Water and rose placed on her little head and her little feet. Soft. And then everyone began to sing to her from their seats. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. Your divine, my divine. They were singing this over and over again to her. Cheryl gently took Zora from my hands before I realized what was happening, because if you can imagine, I was crying. And Cheryl began to walk Zora to every table in the room. And as she got to one table, everyone there would offer Zora a prayer while everyone kept singing. And then she would take her to another table, and that table would offer her prayers, and it went on and on and on. Spacious. It was the most beautiful and precious thing I'd ever experienced in a UU setting. It changed me. It changed all of us. That community became home and has been for me and for Zora ever since.
I'm very impressed you did not cry while telling that story.
Oh, I'm crying. I'm just holding it together.
So my very first national UU experience, as I know some of you has heard, was a gathering of joy and care, but also a gathering of discovery, a little bit different, a lot a bit different. Mm-hmm. There was a 2-week-long National Youth Justice training in Boston, Massachusetts. The very first training we did was a racial justice training. There were 64 humans in the space. And the invitation was to have non-BIPOC humans remain in the circle. And the BIPOC humans would go out, walk out the door, onto the patio, and hold a conversation of their own. Out of the 64 humans in that space, 3 of us got up and walked out. Now, as a 14-year-old, that moment cemented something in my brain. It cemented what I already mostly knew, that Unitarian Universalism was mostly white. That spaces like this, even ones so grounded in justice, were not built with us at the center. And that if I wanted to be heard, I would have to fight. I would have to fight to share my voice, to share my mind, just like so many BIPOC UU leaders before us. I carried this understanding within me for years. It shapes how I enter rooms, how I brace myself before speaking. This story is one example of many, many stories as to why finding our way home mattered so deeply, because it interrupts that entire narrative.
That's right.
At finding our way home, I'm no longer 1/3 of a minority group. And that's amazing. I'm not the only BIPOC young adult in the room. I'm not the only transracial adoptee in that space. That is amazing. I'm surrounded, held by a multitude of leaders, thinkers, creators, caregivers, people who are shaping the very foundation of Unitarian Universalism. Not from the margins, but from the fullness of who we are, who we proudly come from, and who we're meant to be. People who carry their ancestors within them. Their names spoken and lifted not in absence, but in presence. In that shift, something loosens. I don't have to brace myself the same way. I don't have to scan the room and calculate how my voice may land and whether it will be heard at all. I don't have to translate pieces of myself to make myself understandable. Instead, I get to arrive whole. I get to listen deeply without defensiveness. I get to speak freely without rehearsal. I get to be in a community and rest in a community where my presence is not an exception to be accommodated, but an expectation to be honored.
That's right.
That kind of space, it transforms us. It reminds me that the story that I learned, that idea that I solidified at the age of 14, is not the whole story of Unitarian Universalism or of myself.
That's right.
It reconnects me to a lineage of BIPOC Unitarian Universalists who have not only survived within this tradition, but have built, dreamed, and loved and led with brilliance and with care. It's a reminder that we are not new to this work. And we are not alone in it. We belong to that lineage too. Finding our way home has given me so much. Those leaders, those beloved colleagues and mentors and friends, they've given me language, method, vision. They helped me imagine a Unitarian Universalism that is more spacious, more honest, more accountable, more alive, and because of that, I don't return to all of these other spaces in order to fight alone. I return ready to build. Yes. To build communities where difference is not only something to work around, but something to grow from. To build spaces where belonging is not conditional, but assumed from the start. That's right. To build something that may have changed that moment for my 14-year-old self. Something where the next young person of color doesn't have to count who stands up with them.
Thank you. In her book, Fables and Spells, Adrienne Marie Brown says that practice is the way to make prayers come true. Talking to my Black and brown elders in the faith, I know the generations of us prayed in our Unitarian Universalism to find a place where we could show up in our fullness with our gifts and lived experiences respected and held with care. And finding our way home became an answer to and a practice of those prayers. It was a choice, right? To return again and again to a faith that has not always known how to hold us, and to shape it into something that can. You see, there's a difference between calling a place home and feeling at home within it. Does that make sense? Many of us have learned to navigate Unitarian Universalism with skill, to lead, to serve, to care for communities that may not always recognize the fullness of who we are. But at this retreat, the labor of translation softens. We don't have to explain our laughter, our grief, our silences, or our ways of knowing the sacred. In that shared space, home is not aspirational, it's embodied, even if only for a moment. And still, the deeper call remains. And I don't think just for us, as folks who attend that retreat, I think the deeper call is for all of us. If practice is how prayers come true, then the work before all of us is ongoing. It lives in the ways we shape our ministries, in how we tend to one another, and in how we insist that this faith grow beyond its limitations and that we all grow beyond what might limit us. It asks us to hold both love and accountability, to believe that Unitarian Universalism can be a place where all of us, BIPOC folks, queer and trans and non-binary folks, disabled folks, right? People who struggle through mental illness, all of us don't just arrive but feel a clear and full sense of belonging. Finding our way home is not a single journey. It is a collective practice that continues to live on 20 or so years after it began. And each time we gather, each time we tell the truth about our experiences and dare to imagine something fuller, we bring that prayer a little closer to reality. And not just at that retreat, but in the places where we get to live into our calls to keep love, justice, and liberation at the center of our faith. May we live it and do it. May it be so in this place and beyond. Amen. Ashe. And blessed be.